So what's the thing that fighting games and beat 'em ups have in common? Well, pretty much they always have everybody fighting on the streets. And to be quite honest, it's just a different perspective when it comes to both genres of the platform. I mean, let's be real. Most of these characters either end up being fighting game characters or even be cameos in fighting games that you kind of go wondering, huh, that just kind of makes sense. With Capcom having the Final Fight series and a couple of others, and with Sega even having Streets of Rage and a few others such as the Yakuza or Like a Dragon series. What was also thriving in the 90s was a group of awesome radical dudes known as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Initially starting off from a comic line from way back in the day, it's amazing to see that the Turtles have transitioned from being comic book characters to video game characters with the infamous amount of beat-em-ups that you can play for the Cowabunga collection on any system or platform, to the movies, TV shows, and even making guest appearances and other fighting games. And even then, they even have their own fighting game, or rather their series of fighting games in the form of tournament fighters for the NES, Super Nintendo, and Sega Genesis. And like I mentioned, they've also appeared in other fighting games, specifically with Injustice and a few others. But you know, it's interesting to see that these turtles not only have been involved with many projects, but rather they also have been inspirations to other projects as well. Out of that inspiration gave way to one of the most iconic games in the NES history and even video games in the whole. Today's character is Rash the Battletoad, or aka Rash the Cool One. So you might already be wondering, is Battletoads like a reference to the Ninja Turtles? Yes and kinda no. So to explain this, Rash is, well, from a group known as the Battletoads, and from the video game Battletoads that released in 1990 for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And that should be a familiar game because literally that is the most toughest game in the NES lineup. It is even rumored by some people that you're most likely to get killed by a meteor than to actually beat the game. But what does Rash have to do with fighting games? Well, he recently, or rather for the time that he was announced years and years ago, the very first video game character to be the guest character for the fighting game that is known as Killer Instinct. This ended up being followed with the Arbiter and General Rom. But what makes Rash unique? Well, Killer Instinct was initially developed by Rare, the same people who created the Battletoads. So obviously, him and, well, Killer Instinct in a sense had history. Heck, Saber Wolf actually was from a game called Saber Wolf and a few other things that honestly you might want to look up the internet if you really want to know more about it. But Rash is obviously from the game Battletoads, and he carries everything that many have referenced and have seen from the games that he has been a part of. And mind you, his history of games doesn't just apply to, oh, just this one game alone. He has also made cameo appearances with Shovel Knight, Double Dragon, and even has multiple games spanning from Battle Maniacs to the Battletoads arcade game and a couple of others here. But that's the funniest thing too. When you think of Battletoads, you immediately think of the NES game. And I wouldn't exactly blame you. A lot of the times, people often remember this game as a very challenging game to overcome. In fact, you can see people speedrunning this. You can see a video of a person blindfolded speedrunning this. And the thing about it is that he comes from a game that literally has a lot of fun factor. But all the same, he is a beat-em-up character transitioned into a fighting game character. So what makes Rash extremely OP and crazy that the entire community wants him nerfed? If I gotta say unjustly, well, he has a few things. Mobility is one of them, which is mostly running. And I know what you're thinking, but trust me on this, this is actually really good in terms of, you know, fighting games like this. He also has auto combos in the form of light punch and light kick, in which he can do all of these that are very reminiscent of both the arcade game and the NES game of Battletoads. And even the kicks and the punches are very reminiscent, especially with the kicks since they are very much the similar that you get to use from the Battletoads arcade game. Alright, with quarter circle punch, he accesses to a move which many people have seen before, battering ram. You could also do this while running as well with, again, that's why I say running is good. With quarter circle forward punch, that is. With quarter circle forward kick, you have the access to big bad boot. Essentially a really good DP but also launcher. And with quarter circle back kick, you have the wrecking ball. And this allows you to, like battering ram, to be crazy up on the opponent, but this is mostly recommended to literally be in the corner. So, quarter circle forward, battering ram, quarter circle forward, kick, and quarter circle forward, quarter circle back, wrecking ball. So what else does he have? Well, he can use his tongue. Yes, you can use his tongue. By holding all the punch buttons in any direction you want to go with, you can basically make Rash the most annoying person to ever basically grace in fighting game history. You know, stuff like this, and you could even do some tricky stuff like, I don't know, just keep tongue kissing the floor and just annoy the hell out of people because they think you're just gonna not keep whiffing as it is. But again, all of these tools are pretty cool, and you could even absorb or rather eat projectiles and gain shadow meter out of it, which is also important. Why? That's not the only uses that these moves can do. By using Shadow Battering Ram, which you're about to see right here, you could extend your combo. Shadow Big Bad Boot is your best damage ender. And yes, 69 nice percentage damage. Not bad, right? And yes, that is something you need to be aware of. Enders are extremely important in this game. You could also use the Shadow Battering Ram to avoid projectiles and specific normals, so this is your best move to essentially be somewhat phasing invulnerable. And of course, it's a really good combo extender. Now, with Shadow Wrecking Ball, they are able to be crumpled to the wall, and this allows you to continuously go whooping people's butt as basically that they head to the wall and then they crush into it. Now, mind you, it does the same, but with Shadow Wrecking Ball that you could also use in the air as well as the regular ones, you could essentially trap your opponents in the corner. And I gotta tell you, that's really good. Now, besides being a damage ender, Shadow Big Bad Boot is also a good DP. I should probably mention this. The heavy is a launcher, the light is a good anti-air, especially if any Rash is using Wrecking Ball, regardless of whatever variation it is, and Shadow Big Boot is your best, basically your Shoryuken. Instinct Mode allows him to summon, like as you just saw now, the Speed Bike from the infamous Turbo Tunnel level. You could use this as much as you need to, as well as summon multiple bikes in order to add more to the damage. And also, while in Instinct, your frames, or essentially, you are more plus on a few other things. But, again, I'm only going to tell you 15% of what this character can do, because, honestly, playing him is the best way to tell more about it. And even when you activate Instinct Mode, you could also just jump on it so they could just go straight for it as a projectile. You could ride on it, you could slow down, you could even jump to catch your opponents in the air again. Pretty cool. And yeah, that's all there is about Rash. But you're probably wondering, what exactly is he even doing here lore-like-wise? Well, so why is Rash in Killer Instinct? Like, what's an actual lore for this? Well, for starters, if you play the Shadow Lords mode, you learn that he is basically part of the elite group known as, well, the Battletoads, who basically are the Guardians of the Galaxy in their world. If you want me to basically compare them with something that's a little bit more, like, consistent. And as you can pretty much see from the Rash origin files, he relies a lot on melee combat, you know, beat-em-ups. But interesting, what's famous about the Battletoads and majority of the people that have played the games is the notorious Turbo Tunnel incident. But you probably might be wondering, why is he actually here? Well, actually, of learning of Ultratech's, you know, crimes and particularly their bad stuff, he just decided to just show up and just mess around with them. In other words, he just heard of Ultratech being evil and just said, you know what, I'm gonna crash this party. But you know, when you really think about it, characters like Rash, Cody, Hagar, Guy, and a couple of others that in a sense that later appear in fighting games isn't too far-fetched from them being, oh yeah, like you'll definitely see them in another fighting game in the near future. I mean, Street Fighter has already been doing this with, not only with Final Fight, but with rival schools. And it wouldn't even be surprising if Namco and NetherRealm Studios and even like a couple of other fighting game publishers do the exact same thing where, oh yeah, remember this guy from this arcade, from this beat 'em up? Why don't we just put them in this game, because they'll definitely enjoy this. I mean, heck, I would love to see a Streets of Rage fighting game, or even like characters from the Like the Dragon or Yakuza series to kind of make an appearance. There was a reason that people wanted Kiryu and Majima to be in any fighting game. It didn't even matter where it was. They just wanted to see the characters in a fighting game. And I guarantee you that most of these characters that are beloved and are loved by many people who grew up playing the beat 'em ups back then would definitely agree that seeing a good amount of those characters in, I would say, modern fighting games would definitely be a warm welcome to enjoy and play, and even learn to play in a different environment compared to how they play in their beat 'em up series, or rather their beat 'em up games respectively. The thing about beat 'em up characters is that they are not actually far off from being, like I mentioned before, being later on fighting game characters. With Final Fight, they have a lot of characters such as Cody, Guy, Lucia, Poison, Hugo, and a couple of others. Heck, even Carlos, despite that he's not playable, is an NPC fighter in Street Fighter 6. And mind you, the majority of the Final Fight characters either appear in Street Fighter, in crossover games in tangent with Street Fighter characters, such as Street Fighter Cross Tekken and Marvel vs. Capcom. More specifically, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Vanilla, Marvel vs. Capcom Ultimate, and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Again, seeing beat-em-up characters being represented in ways that honestly showcase how much you really enjoy the series as a whole does truly show with Capcom, in this case with anything else. Like, why else would they pick Hagar? I mean, sure, you could have picked Zangief, but let me be real. That's like basically saying, sure, we could just pick another Street Fighter character, but we wanted a character that would represent, yes, the beat-em-up days when we were thriving with Final Fight and a couple of others. Then, of course, the Ninja Turtles, from their recent appearance from either Injustice 2, and then a couple of other games, and even some cameos, and even some, I want to call them skin specifics, because technically Brawlhalla is more like, yeah, like you could say that they're in the game, but they are technically skins or crossover skins for certain characters. But again, like I said before, beat-em-up characters always have a unique place when it comes to fighting games, because you would know that seeing stuff like what they would do on the games they play be not only reasonably makes a lot of sense, but also pretty cool to look at. And that is it for Rash the Battletoad and the significant importance of beat-em-up characters in fighting games. And if by some chance the community balance update happens to ruin my boy, well, Rash, you and I had a pretty good run. But before I do go, my Battletoad friend actually wants to show you a unique music video that he decided to put this for you guys to take a look at. He quotes saying that this is exactly what you should listen if someone decides to offer you a mixtape outside of the street and basically tries to force you to buy, I don't know, $30 to $40 in the streets, because that literally makes no sense. So anyway, he hopes that this particular music track is not only a killer beat, but it's also a beat that I'm pretty sure when you really think about it is the most logical to listen to. Anyway guys, I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, see you next time.
Cameos are killing me.
Supreme!